G'day. Thanks for joining us for this special presentation. I'm Outback Zak and welcome to the Australian Animal Fire Victims Appeal. This isn't an easy story to tell, but it must be told, as the world needs to know what happened here in Victoria, Australia, what continues to happen, and the aftermath Australia's deadliest disaster has left. On Saturday the 7th of February, our sun's heat penetrated the southern hemisphere and created temperatures never experienced before by Victorians. The temperature reached 46.4 degrees Celsius, which is 115 degrees Fahrenheit, and with winds up to 100 kilometres an hour. These conditions, mixed with lightning and arsonists, caused the most horrifying bushfires in Australian history. The fires have taken over 200 people's lives, left 7,500 people homeless, and burned over 1 million acres of land. I'm doing this appeal because as an animal conservationist and wildlife warrior, included in these figures are native Australian wildlife. It is now estimated that well over 1 million animals have perished, with thousands needing to be treated and rescued, and we need your help. A number of special organisations have raised funds for the families and domestic animals affected by the fires. But now it's time to help save the native Australian wildlife. What is going on out there must truly be seen to be believed. I was overcome with grief when I saw the animal fatalities and just how many there are in need of medical treatment. The fires have been put out in parts, but the animals that survived those areas are now left with no food, scorched feet, in agony and infections that will grant rescuers very little time to find them. If it wasn't for the not-for-profit organisation Wildlife Victoria and its brave volunteers sending search and rescue teams into fire-ridden grounds, their vets inundated and overwhelmed, working around the clock at animal shelters and triages, all hope would be lost. But they desperately need funding and can only do it with your help. To make a donation, please phone 1300 859 453 or go online to wildlifevictoria.org.au and click on the easy-to-use donate button. All credit cards and PayPal can be used. We thank you. Joining me now is the Vice President of Wildlife Victoria, Mr. Manfred Zabinskis. Manfred, great to have you in. Thank you so much for coming at this critical time. Now, how's it all going?
Hectic. It's probably the best way to describe it.
Yeah.
It's been an amazing challenge to deal with such a disaster of this size.
As an organiser of so much, how are you coping with it?
Well, the only way we're coping is just the amazing group of people that are helping us. We've got a brilliant team. So many people have put their hands up to assist. We've now got dozens and dozens of people helping us organise and many, many more that are actually out on the fire grounds and doing the search and rescue and stuff like that. So it's just been by having a fantastic team of people that are all cooperating and working together well.
How many volunteers would you say you've got?
Well, we've got lots active at the moment. In the office at any one time we could have up to a dozen people just handling phones and inquiries and doing the administrative things and helping organise rosters and teams of people that have to go out there. We generally have 50, 60 people out on the fire grounds at any one time, searching the fire grounds and looking for burnt animals. And then there's just, I couldn't even imagine how many people we've got out there that are helping transport things and collecting donated goods and getting medical supplies out to areas where animals have come into care and stuff like that. So there's hundreds of people involved, hundreds.
Can you tell us a bit about Wildlife Victoria and what the organisation actually does, and a little bit of the history as well?
Okay, well, we've been here for a long time. We've been here for decades now, and so it's gradually built up over a period
Thank
of
God
years.
for you guys, huh?
Well, you know, someone has to do this sort of work, and we're made up of people that are just ordinary people, have jobs, families, live all in different parts in rural areas in the city. And prior to the fires, we had about 550 members that were mostly made up from people that actually care for wildlife on a regular basis. So they're the people that are licensed to look after animals in their homes. Many have changed, converted their homes into what are effectively a rehabilitation sanctuaries.
Amazing. We went out to Leesa Milligan's property, and she had turned her entire home into an animal hospital.
Yeah, it was a nice offer of hers. Yeah, so one day a fairly normal household, and then all of a sudden a triage facility for one of the worst fire districts in Victoria, and that's typical of a lot of the people that are members of Wildlife Victoria. And then there's all the other numbers of people that are out there that can do whatever they can, which is sometimes just to rescue and help transport animals to where the shelters are. But predominantly 550 people that just are passionate about the welfare of our animals and love our wildlife.
All of the volunteers that you have, none of them are doing this, that's not paid work.
Well, we've actually had to employ some people now because it was just unbearable, the challenges that we were faced with to handle this size of disaster. We weren't coping with. We have great volunteers, but it was just too much.
Yeah,
so we have now got a handful of people that we brought in as professionals to manage what we need managed so that we could do this job as best as possible. We can't get this wrong. There are too many animals out there that are suffering that need to get the best care possible. So we have got a handful of people that are employed to tackle the really difficult tasks, and then they're backed up by the hundreds and hundreds of volunteers that work under that management.
I spent some time with a couple of your volunteers up at the Dalesford fire area, and they're part of the search and rescue team. Now, I think we've got some footage we can have a look at. We know about the tree rescuers for the koalas, and the koalas, would you say that they're the main animal that, probably the most difficult animal to catch?
They are one of the most difficult because they really don't like human contact, and because they're so high up in the trees, you actually have to have the tree climbers go in first of all to then get them from the top and coax them down from above the head, and then they have to keep bringing them down to a height that we can then go in to either grab them or use the equipment to get them.
Right.
And then put them in the blanket.
And since the fires occurred, how many koalas have you brought in yourself?
Well, the team that I was working with, we managed to rescue 11.
Do you find it's easier not to find out? Do you try and sort of, because you do build that attachment to begin with, and do you sort of pull back at a point and not allow yourself to get too attached to it for the mere possibility that, they may be euthanised?
Yeah, I mean, I do, in as much as I say, okay, they've been transported to the appropriate place. Now they will get the care that they need, and I'm sure everything will work out for the best. And then that's sort of where I then draw that line.
Well, I think they're in safe hands with you. Now, Manfred, why do people need to donate, and where is the money going to be spent?
Well, there's lots of things that we need the money for. Right from the start, we have to get people out there looking for our wildlife that are in the fires. And to do that, there's requirements that we're safe out there. So we have to do training, we have to have the right equipment. So everyone that goes out there has to have fireproof overalls and fire boots and helmets and goggles and gloves. So we need to provide that to all of our members. We need radio so they can communicate and stay safe out there, and rescue equipment. And by having so many people out there in that many different areas, we've had a huge need for extra equipment.
Because the grounds are still smouldering.
It's dangerous out there. Even areas that we're allowed to go into still have risks. They have trees that fall. There are hot spots with ash on the ground that you can step into. So you need to have all of the right gear. So we've had to buy masses of that to fit out the new volunteers that we have that are going out there to make up the numbers to go out and look for the animals. Then there's the animals. Right. The animals need immediate care, so they need bandaging, they need medications. So there are facilities all over Victoria that are taking in these animals, and they can't afford to finance all these things themselves. They're all volunteers. They're all people that pay for caring for animals out of their own pockets. So with the amount of animals that are coming in now, they need assistance. They can't manage this. So We intend to cover all costs of medication, of bandages, veterinary treatment. All of those costs are covered. We have lots of donations in that regard already, but there are things that we need to purchase as well along the way.
Yeah.
And there's many other costs now. While we're out there looking in the fire grounds, we're seeing animals that have actually survived the fires are now starving to death. They're in the middle of blackened landscapes and they've got nothing to eat. So we've already had to jump on and quickly get food drops organised, and we're going to have to supply food for many, many months, perhaps even over a year in some areas, until the habitat recovers enough to sustain the population of animals that have survived.
You know, by that time, the fires could be back again.
Well, they can. Some of the animals that are coming into care that have got significant burns, they're going to be in care for a long time. So it's not just a case of getting through this fire season and then the job's over. Some of these animals are going to be cared for over 18 months, which means they'll go through a complete another fire season. And that's 18 months of special food, 18 months of bandages and medical attention and veterinary costs and ongoing expenses. And the money's going to go to all of that. For the first time ever, we've had the upset of the enormity of this situation is that many of our members, some of our members and volunteers of Wildlife Victoria, they've lost everything. People that were our shelters that had hundreds of animals in their care and magnificent facilities, they've also lost all of that and they've been destroyed in this process. And I don't recall the year where that's happened before. We need to help them rebuild their facilities. We need these people to care for our animals for the years to come on. So we're excited about the prospect of being able to assist all of these people and get their shelters back up and running. Yeah,
great. If Wildlife Victoria doesn't receive this relief funding, what's going to happen?
Well, some people will be pushed beyond their limits. On a normal basis, even the rescues that we do on a day-to-day basis have huge impact on people's ability to survive. There are many people out there that care for wildlife at great expense to their own families. I have personal friends that I know don't eat all the time. They'll put a bottle of milk into a joey that they're raising when they can't afford food for themselves. I've had people cry on the phone because we've called on their help to go and rescue an animal that they're closest to, and they didn't even have the money for the petrol to go out. I mean, that's really distressing. So people are generally pushed to the limit caring for wildlife because we don't get funding. And the pressures of something like a fire disaster and so many animals needing care, I mean, these people are going to need assistance.
Bushfires are said to be on the rise thanks to dramatic climate changes. Now, what needs to be done to prevent the extreme loss of life, and what is Wildlife Victoria doing to combat this?
Well, there's been lots of pressures on our animals. The bushfires have been the last straw for a lot of them, but we've already spent many years in drought. The animals have been subjected to enormous pressures. They've had more habitat loss as we encroach on remnant bushland. We need to get more serious about considering the needs of our wildlife. We need to make sure, we need to engage in communications with government departments, with property owners. We need to ensure that there are habitats remaining and corridors between habitats, and we need to have a look at the impacts that all this climate change is having on our wildlife. And making real changes to their ability to survive these things. So they've been under pressure for a long time now. We've lost species, or we're losing species. We've lost large numbers of animals for various reasons. And then you have a catastrophe like this and it just decimates the populations. I mean, Australia's the driest place on the planet.
Now, these fires, they are going to come back again. They say it is part of the cycle. What do you do? What do we do about it?
Well, I guess we're going to have to live with it and deal with it as best as possible, but to consider that in the big scheme of things so that we do make allowances. We need to make sure that we've got enough habitat and enough connecting corridors that allow animals to move around. If we allow remnant habitat to be wiped out or just survive in little pockets, when a fire comes through it can destroy an entire habitat, an entire ecosystem and all the animals in it. So we need to make sure that there is a continuum of habitat and areas for animals to be safe so that when fires come through, it doesn't wipe out everything. We need to concentrate on making sure that that there are escape options for our animals and that there are parts that they can be safe in. We need to ask that landowners be more tolerant of our wildlife. Now with all of these fires that have happened, some of the wildlife's coming out of the burnt areas and they need to go on to the areas that have been unburnt. So they're now entering farmland and they're entering areas where there's going to be some conflict. People that have been doing it hard, farmers that have been in drought and that have struggled having livestock are now getting these last few animals that have survived from our fires coming onto their land as well, looking for food, looking for water. We're going to need to make sure everyone is tolerant and works together and considers the needs of our wildlife as a big part of the picture of overcoming the challenges that climate change and other pressures on our environment will take part in.
Yeah, great. Manfred, thank you so much for joining us today. And on behalf of the world, we wish Wildlife Victoria all our love and support. We really do. Thanks, mate.
Thank you very much.
Cheers. So please get on your phone and dial 1300 859 453 or online for those overseas and type in wildlifevictoria.org.au and click on the donate button on that page. Your donation is going to save lives. Remember the volunteer firefighter giving that big koala a drink? Well, he'll be joining Outback Zak right after this break. Welcome back. Well, a photo that is now spread across the world of a firefighter giving a thirsty koala a well-earned drink, Mr. David Tree. G'day, mate.
G'day, Zach.
How you doing?
How are you, buddy? I'm all right, mate.
I'm doing all right in this crazy time.
It is.
Really is, really is. Now, David, firstly, we want to know, how is Samantha the koala?
I caught up with Samantha just a couple of days ago. Oh, no, sorry, about a week and a half ago. And
Great.
Colleen Woods at the Southern Ash Wildlife Centre's
Yes, I spoke with her.
Yep,
Yeah,
and
fantastic.
she's got more than just Samantha to look after.
Yeah, yeah.
And she's got her hands full. She's doing an absolute top job. You know, I really,
Yeah, right.
my input was just so minute to what she's doing. It's not only has she got one koala, I think the last I heard she's got about 40 she's looking
right.
after. So
and that's just
it's a Trojan of an effort.
amazing.
It really is, Zach.
Yeah.
It really is.
Now, when I spoke to her, she said that Samantha looked like she was up for a 6-month rehabilitation period. That's a long time.
It's a real long time, and I think just the rehabilitation that Sam's going through and that Colleen's administering and her volunteers. I think the other thing is, where are we going to bring her back to? Because we lost so much of our Strzelecki forest.
Yeah, right.
And particular species of tree.
And that was where she was found.
Yep.
Right.
Up in Samson's Road, which where her name's come from.
Is that
So,
right?
yeah, it's just a name of a road
Okay.
around Melbourne North, up on Dickies Hill.
Maybe they didn't realise she was a female.
Well, I didn't realise she was a female. You know, or else I would have got her number from the word go.
You know, now look, I think the world wants to know, how was she spotted and where was this place and how did it happen?
Look, there's been a bit of media controversy over it was just a backburn. It's an offensive measure that the CFA and the DSC use. There's a small window of opportunity, and